So this is where your chat is. This is your screen. And yeah, so comments, comments right there. So you're live.
All right, I think we got this figured out, but I really need to look up there. If I look down here, I won't see anything. Okay.
Okay.
All right, my screen just disappeared. Anybody there? Okay, I'm gonna try to.
There should be a viewer count somewhere.
Okay. We're still trying to figure all this out. I think I'm in the group, but I had to go in through my private account to get to here. So eventually we'll figure this all out. Okay. No, I can't hear you, and I can't see that you're here, but I guess it does show that two people are watching. That's all I see is an eyeball with two eyes, so that's okay. Hopefully this is going to record and be available for people to learn from afterwards. And it's kind of hard because I'm supposed to look up there, but I can only see what I'm doing over here, so forgive me however that turns out. Anyway. So what I wanted to share here is this is a perfect example that I'm going to be discussing about why it's so important that when you're purchasing essential oils in general, although this applies to other things besides essential oils, it's important to know and to search for the botanical name of the plant and the type of extraction. Because many times this is not on the label, it's not on the website, and it can make a huge difference. And this particular thing I'm going to be talking about called dragon's blood is one of the worst or hardest things I've ever seen to find and discern the truth. Even when I go to medical references on the internet, they are so incorrect or half correct, or you can tell the person isn't trained in aromatherapy, so there's a lot of questions they don't know to ask or not ask, and it was one that boggled my mind. And I've spent over 20 hours just trying to ascertain and split the truth and the hairs here on what is and what isn't. Okay, so first let me explain to you how I got onto this. Now, this is a major problem, and I'm working on a teaching called The Balm of Gilead, which is actually going to maybe be a whole book, because that in and of itself has problems with the true identity of that plant. This is a problem oftentimes with frankincense. Many companies will just tell you they're selling you a bottle of frankincense, but you don't really know what species it is. I can usually tell by the price, just because I know what the price point is in the wholesale market. And I can tell if they're selling the really inexpensive Indian Serrata, which, has its benefits, but oftentimes people are shopping price only and they don't understand the quality or the chemistry that they particularly want to derive from a frankincense, which can vary. Not only that, frankincense is one of the plants or essential oils that I find is most adulterated, in the sense that you can chemically type and use lemon oil and or tea tree oil and mix it chemically to create and add to a frankincense and technically come out with the frankincense. And this is why I know a lot of companies are really all into the science and the scientism and the chemistry. I am not. I come from the background or the attitude or the mindset that we are reclaiming the art of using herbs and oils and botanicals in different forms for us to help heal and keep ourselves healthy and minister to our families and friends. So for me, it's about, if you grow or source the plant and you use it, you it's kind of like making bread, whether or not you need to add more water or more flour. And so it's about the art of it. And if I am doing the art of it and using the plant in the whole, which I believe is more or better because it's in the ratios of the chemical constituents that work together synergetically the way that Yahweh meant for it to be, instead of extracting just parts of the plant, which science does all the time, and pharmaceutical companies and doctors and the big oil companies that use chemists kind of do that to technically get their oils to be the chemical composite that they prefer. To me, why do I need a chemist? If I'm going to go straight to the plant, I'm going to process it, extract it, whether it's an alcohol extraction or a distillation process or a cold press process. It's all therapeutic if it hasn't been adulterated, okay? And so what is the need for scientism and chemistry from that point of view? And I know a lot of you will get bent out of shape over this, but that's okay. We have to understand and think that for 6,000 years, mankind has been using plants from ancient times and biblical times for healing and for health and for emotional, spiritual reasons. So, try to put it that way. So, let's go back to dragon's blood. And how did I come about this? Well, I was doing research on a lipid oil, or we call a carrier oil, for a blend for my second daughter who is expecting. And she wanted to, use something for her belly and prevent stretch marks, etc. And so I went back to research some more stuff, and I came up and found an oil that was recommended through a professional group that I was in called Percaxi. Well, I had never heard of Percaxi oil, and I got to get it on the website. We've been giving away samples for quite a while, but we have this Percaxi oil, and this actually has a little bit of, you can tell there's a little bit of solidity there, because if it gets 67, 68 degrees, it will I don't know if that's too, it will start to solidify. But all you have to do is shake it up, and it basically goes away. If you get it cold, you can just put it in a little bit of warm water. But one of the reasons for this was, for our older women, is that, even young women, pregnant women, is it helps long term if we use it for brown spots. And it's good for stretch marks, etc., and scarring. And it's not the only oil that does that, but I was taken back by it. So it's a South American oil, and in this case, it's cold pressed from Brazil. It's the seed. And when I sourced it from the distiller, in this case, it's not a steam distillation, but a cold press process, they sent me a sample of dragon's blood. And when I went to go research that, I realized what popped up for me first. Because if you don't know the botanical name, you're going to get different answers. And if you don't know what to ask, and you don't know what you don't know, you're going to get probably the wrong answers. But the distiller did put the botanical name on it. So I looked up the botanical name, and it was Croton lecleri. Now, they gave me a sample, and then I realized, that has a name called Sangre de Drago, and similar like that. So it's South American. Basically, that means the dragon's blood. And then I remember Mishpach's sister out there, Jessica Fisher, who told me years ago about this dragons, or Sangre de Drago, and I had researched it and went to order, but I just never I never followed through because her mother, I think it was using it for, I believe, arthritis. And so then I realized, oh, that is the same, plant that she had told me about. So I started doing some research, and I thought, the first thing I found was that they were using this Croton legleri. Now, understand, we're going to get into what dragon's blood is and isn't, but I'm specifically talking about Croton legleri, Lechlleri, because it makes a huge difference in what you're using. And one of the things that I found was in medical research that when people had an avulsion or a tooth ripped out in an accident or whatever, that they would use the Croton legleri dragon's blood to put the tooth in to save or it's a medium to keep the tooth until they could implant it back into the mouth, and it helped keep the teeth alive better than they had used different kinds of milk. And so I thought, oh wow, it's good for teeth. And then I started exploring more properties about it. And at the time, well, it still is a problem in a way. If you can see, I have a space right there, right between my teeth. And it's because I have great teeth on the top, but I'm losing bone. I've been losing bone since I went into menopause. And so what happens is I get these pockets, no matter how much I brush my teeth, etc. And I'm very concerned because the bottom of this tooth is very narrow, and I don't want to lose my tooth. Of course, in particular, a front tooth, right? It's very expensive, and even with vanity, missing a very front tooth for chewing and eating and talking can make a huge difference. So I decided I'm going to start trying to use this Croton legleri because of the research that I found on it. And I discovered it was also really good for gums and in tightening the gums. And I was looking for something antibacterial, etc. So that what I would do after I brush my teeth is I would drop it along my gum line, 1 or 2 drops, particularly in that area. And it just so happened at the time that it was right before Sukkot that this tooth started becoming sensitive. I don't know how this is working, but it's asking to join my room. So I don't know if this is still working or not. I guess it is. If you can, Jeantel, I think you're trying to join a room that I started somewhere else and we got rid of the room. So if you can, please send me a message on this live thing and let me know if you're seeing it. If not, we'll post it later because we're still trying to figure this out, okay, until we can get our teaching platform up. So please let me know. Anyway, where was I? So I decided to try that. The other thing that was happening was I happen to be one of those few people who I do not absorb calcium, and so my body just dumps calcium. So what is normally good for a lot of people, like sulfur crystals and vitamin D, even in the right ratio, MK7, just these different ratios. If I take liquid vitamin D or vitamin D, in my case, I would make a calcium deposit or a bone spur. So I had to be very careful. And I had accidentally taken a product that I thought was just a bunch of, vitamins, minerals, but it happened to have vitamin D in it. And so I had gotten a bone spur that just really stuck out. You don't see it right now. It's almost gone. And I couldn't use my hand. It just started inflaming and getting like that very, very quickly. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I have this sample that was sent to me. I'm going to start trying it on my teeth, and I'm going to start trying it on my bone spur. And of course, I was doing boron, which helped get the use of my hand back. And I shared that in a newsletter a few months ago for those of you that get the newsletter. And so that's how I started on this. Well, then I decided that, wow, I saw immediate results with the bone spur. I was, my tooth sensitivity was going away. My gums were getting, much better and tightening. So I thought, well, this is great. I want to be able to source this dragon's blood, Croton Leclerc. And so I went to my big distiller overseas and I said, I want dragon's blood. And of course, because I had known the botanical name, all my research was, I knew better to purposely type in Croton Leclerc instead of just dragon's blood. And so that was the research and the information that I was getting. I didn't realize until my distiller sent me the wrong oil, at least I thought it was wrong, that, oh, this is a much bigger issue and a much bigger problem. You see, my distiller from his part of the world knows that dragon's blood, in his case, is a different botanical name called Dracaena cinnabar. And he gave me what I asked, but he didn't pay real close attention that I was, or I wasn't specific enough about the particular botanical name. So I get this oil, and I'm thinking it's going to be my Croton Leclerc latex type oil, and it's not. It smells different. It looks different. I know it is not what I ordered. So I had to go back to the drawing table. And then I was like, oh, wow, what am I going to do with all this oil? How am I going to sell it? And what is its purposes? Because it's not the same. Okay. So I wanted to kind of share and show this. There's a whole lot more to this, but I want to show you how this can really make a difference. Let me see. I think I see Gentil. Gentil or Gentil? Okay. Yeah, I think what happened is when I tried to go live from the Academy room, it was creating a room, which basically was just a messenger group where we could all interface and talk, but it wasn't necessarily going to record the message. At least we don't think. And there were some other things that it wasn't allowing us to do. So we learned so far, we think, that I have to go back to my personal page, Nitsa, and then open up or have it go live in the group. So hopefully this is what's going to happen. And so anyway, so that's where we're at. And thank you for joining us. Okay, so I just want to show you, hopefully you're going to be able to see this. Okay, so the, and we've been sending, last month we sent out samples of the Percaxi oil, which I need to get on the website. And we have also made a Percaxi oil. It's either called Mama's Baby Balm or maybe Mama's Bump, I think, oil. And it has some essential oils in it. We have Percaxi by itself. We have it as a blend for mothers to put on their stomach, for prevention of stretch marks, etc. But I have found that mature women love it. And so we're calling it the Skin Balm oil for the older or those who, need moisture in their skin and help with the brown spots. And we call it Mama's Bump when we get it on the website oil. But if it's going to be in a salve where we've really made it much, much richer, it's going to be in a salve. And I don't know if that works or not, but it's going to be in a salve. And it looks like this, but we have added shea butter, cocoa butter, and I made this batch with Emu Oil. And let me make a side note about Emu Oil. I know in the Messianic Hebrew Roots community that you know that Emu Oil is not a kosher animal to eat. Because, people eat their meat, they eat their eggs, but the oil is extremely useful. So when they go to butcher that emu like you would a chicken, they also extract this emu oil off the layer underneath the feathers. So they sell the meat and they sell the eggs and then they sell the oil. And the oil is amazing for the skin. I used to use it years ago because I wasn't maybe 60 miles from the nearest emu farm in Montana. And but I quit using it when I started coming into, trying to apply kosher to my food and to my household, etc. And then as I studied with the Jewish people, I learned it's what you eat, it's what you put in your mouth. And since I wasn't eating emu oil, what I've learned is that it's okay to put on the skin, and it has these wonderful benefits. Now, I will tell you, you personally need to search that out and do what you want to do. So, but I do want to, because I know there are going to be people who have real issues with it, and there's other people who have no issues with it. I did make this batch with emu oil because emu oil, I think, goes like 7 layers into the skin, and it's pretty amazing. So I probably will end up making the batch available with or without emu oil in it, but it's also going to be called Mama's Bump or Mama's Bump Salve and or the Skin Balm Salve. So there'll be the oil and the salve. But let's get back to the dragon's oil, the dragon's blood, and then we're going to go into some of the other science and research on that, the differences and why it's such an issue of being confused. So here I am. I get this sample, and I'm going to try to show this to you. So I get this sample of dragon's blood. Now, one of the things I want to show you, I don't know if you can see how thick that is. It will stain your clothing, by the way, but really watch this. This is pretty cool. So let's see. Okay, so, but I want you to watch this. See how red and dark it is, right? If I rub it long enough, it starts to turn white. I don't know if you can, I don't know if you can see. My camera's like, I don't know. Anyway, it's white and it looks silvery, and it just turns white. And it's, the red's gone. The red's all gone, okay? And it's kind of sticky because what it does is it has a strong amount of natural latex. And so this is one of the reasons why it's used for wounds. And so that's another reason why it's good when you put it along your gum line, because it's antibacterial, antiviral, etc., right? It's also astringent. So like as soon as you put it in your mouth, you feel it starting to pull. So it's tightening your gums. So if you have like gum disease, that's great. And I was wanting to tighten those holes, those deep pockets. And so I was using it for the bone spur on my wrist, and I was putting it in my mouth. And I was like, wow, the pain's lessening, the bone spur is going down, right? And so, I should tell you that if you're going to use it for your mouth, you just put 1 or 2 drops in a little cup with water, okay? That's probably the best way to do it, and swish it around. Hold it in there if you can, at least a minute. But I'm a little weird, and I'm always like, I don't slow down for too much. So I just open my mouth, and I drop 1 or 2 drops in my mouth. And you're going to start feeling it be very astringent very quickly. And I try to, move it around with my tongue along my gum lines. And then because you feel it pulling, then you're going to want to spit it out, okay? Now this is also used, but I have got no experience with it. It is also used for the stomach and diarrhea. One of the things I read that it actually kind of slows down your digestive. So I don't think that's a good thing to eat or do unless you need to have it because you have something going on and you need antibacterial, antifungal slowing down of diarrhea. So, but I wanted to show you, what I want to show you is the difference, okay? So now I get from the other company, right? And I'll show you in a second. I get from the other company what they call dragon's blood. And if you'll see, that is not very thick or very red. I can tell you that it is a hot oil and it tastes totally different. It's not like astringent, it is like hot. So you see the difference between the dark red Croton the glary, that's going up under my ring, versus this Dracaena cinnabari, which actually kind of smells like a cinnamon or a calamus. Calamus is kind of very similar to that. And you have to be careful with calamus. Calamus is not something, you know, you want to just kind of mess around with. So I wanted to show you that difference. And then I want to show you just with the Perform, you know, the little stick samplers we got. So I want you to see. Okay, if you can see, this one is dark red and heavy, and you can even see the little grains. And when you put it in your mouth, you spit it out, you'll see these little tiny, like kind of like little hairs, astringent. And this one is the cinnabar. This is the Dracaena sample. And this is actually an essential oil, and this is more like a sap, like in when you, well, they're both saps, but this one's distilled, and this one is actually a raw sap. They're both resins. They're the red resin from the tree, but this is more the natural sap, like you would get maple syrup from a tree. So I wanted you to see the difference and how important it is to know what botanical plant, and sometimes you could get the same botanical plant, but it will make a difference as to what country it's from, which will tell you some other things. Anyway, and you know, the smell, like I said, the Dracaena, the dragon's blood, Dracaena cinnabar, it smells kind of like cinnamon, and it's hot. It'll be hot if you put it on your tongue. You won't want to do that. And it, whereas this one, you know, it doesn't taste great, but it doesn't taste super bad, and it's just going to be astringent. You're going to want to be spitting it out because it's pulling, it's tightening your gums, etc. And then you can see, hopefully this, you can see, let's see if I can get the camera just right, how thick, and you can actually kind of see some of the plant material in there. Whereas this one's really runny, more fluid, and that's the different species and different extraction. This is steam distilled. And this one you can actually, I mean, it's just kind of runny and more like blood, coagulating there. So I wanted to show that to you. So here's the problem. Dragon's blood is not a specific plant word. Dragon's blood is a word that is used, and depending on what country you're from and where you're from, it means different things. And if you don't know better, you think it's the same thing maybe somewhere else, but it's not. Dragon's blood is a red resin from a tree, but there are many different types of trees and different species of families that make up dragon's blood in that, what we're calling, okay? Okay, so what I went back to do, and I had it on the website this week, when I started asking you questions, I wanted to ask you these questions, is, let's see here, in the group, let me get the group here, questions. Let's see here. Okay. Sorry, this internet's like really slow or something. Okay, so the first question is, you need to know, or the first thing you need to always know is, what is the botanical name and particular species, because it will make a difference. You also need to know what form it's in. What kind of extraction? How did they take it? Was it steam distilled? Was it a CO2 process? Was it a solvent? Could be a sugar alcohol solvent, but is it a solvent? Is it a sap? Is it an enfleurage? These are different things that you learn in aromatherapy. So it makes a difference. It may also make a huge difference. In fact, it is a difference chemically as to what part of the plant it's from. Okay, so when you look to make your purchases, you want to know, is it from the seed? Is it from the root? Is it from the bark? Is it from the flower? Is it from the leaf? Okay. And as we will get into teaching aroma response therapy and how to learn how to specifically test and or blend for yourself to customize what you need, not just go by, reference books. You're going to learn that people are like trees. And the scripture is full of that information, but it really is literally also true when we're dealing with the resonance of the part of the plant to the resonance to a person. For an example, if I didn't know, let's say I had, 10 oils on my shelf and essential oils, and I had a respiratory issue, and I didn't know which oil to use. One thing I would want to look for is the essential oils that are made from a leaf, the leaf distillation. Why? Because in parallel from man as a tree through scripture, the leaf is what respires or does the respiration or the breathing for the plant. So usually when I use an essential oil for breathing or for my lungs for which I breathe, I am going to want to use a leaf oil like eucalyptus, peppermint, etc. Okay, so that's kind of an example. If I want to feel grounded and minister to the body in a certain way, I'm going to look for the roots. If I want to deal with emotional, spiritual, mind issues, I'm going to be going to the top of the plant where the flower is. The flower is very delicate and our mind is delicate, and that's how we can minister and bring healing to the mind. So I'm trying to put in a lot here, but not too much. So I just wanted you to know this is an example of why it can be so important. And I definitely wouldn't want to be using the Dracaena cinnabar the way that I was using the Croton Leglari, even though they're both dragon's blood, because it's just a generic term. It's like when I'm doing the research on the balm of Gilead, not just for the botanical plant, but also for the biblical, scriptural history and applications, all the way to Yeshua, Jesus being our balm of Gilead. When I focus on just the botanical plant, you're going to see that even botanists or people in science or master aromatherapy will disagree on what plant that is. But if I take it back to the biblical studies in Mount Nebo and Mount Gilead and the Gilead Mountains, which is on the western side of the Dead Sea in Jordan, which of course was Israel at one time, that is the plant species that I want. And that means a lot more to me. But to a lot of people who have not had this history, because I can tell you, 30 years ago, I wanted to grow and have my own balm of Gilead plant, but I could not find anybody who really truly knew the species. Today, I'm much closer, and I have been to the balm of Gilead farm in Israel when we took a tour. We took a tour group year and a half ago now, almost 2 years. We actually went there, and we saw the species, and I have a video on our YouTube channel on the balm of Gilead. We actually videotaped the guy Ehrlich who is growing it there. But if I wanted to go onto Amazon and buy balm of Gilead, I can get something called the balm of Gilead that's made from pine resin, I think from Georgia. Okay, now if I didn't know any better, I think, oh wow, I bought the balm of Gilead. Well, you bought a balm, you bought a resin, and some people would say any plant or tree that produces a resin could be called a balm. A balm or something that you create like a salve or as a poultice to heal can be a balm. But it doesn't mean it's the balm of Gilead. Okay, so that's kind of another area that we get into those kind of issues. And I even when I was researching dragon's blood, when I read some of the things that the doctors wrote and the health practitioners, I was shocked. Even some that I really kind of look up to, I was shocked at the lack of information and understanding on dragon's blood. But I can also understand how it happens. Because, historically, we would have been using and calling upon what was in our country, our locale, our region. We would not have had a global market of what anything and everything somebody calls dragon's blood or, a balm of Gilead. So I just wanted to let you know. Now, I think after about 20 hours of study, and there's so much more to know, that dragon's blood, and I will read this, is, instead of thinking it's one specific plant or a type of plant with this type of extraction, is that it's actually a resin, primarily a very red or dark red resin from a tree. But it could be different kinds of trees, different kinds of species from different places in the world. And overall, these plants are anti-diuretic, anti-ulcer, antimicrobial, antiviral. They're wound healing, especially the crotonal glare, because of the latex properties, anti-tumoral, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, etc. But the identification is a problem. And when you're reading papers, like even this paper, this scientific paper, it's like, 20, 30 pages long. It talks about what the different species are known for scientifically. And they talk about the isolated compounds, because see, science, that's what they like to do. They like to find a compound that does something, and then they want to isolate it, and then they make a drug out of it, and that's how they make money. I believe as a whole, as an artisan, as a herbalist, aromatherapist, I want to keep things in its whole so that everything's there to counter and to balance the way Yahweh made it originally. I don't want an extraction. An example of this that's often misused and used to sell frankincense essential oil is we are told, and we have read, but we can all read it, but we don't know, and we're not smart enough to know how to put it into context. Is people will get frankincense and are told that frankincense essential oil, steam distilled, because it has anti-inflammatory properties of boswellic acid. Now, frankincense is amazing for the brain in the distilled form, but if you're getting it for inflammation because of the boswellic acid, you are not going to get hardly any in a bottle of distilled frankincense oil, essential oil. If you want that boswellic acid, you're going to get it in a form that is macerated and infused in a carrier oil such as olive oil. For instance, our anoint frankincense and myrrh oil is an infusion where we take frankincense and myrrh. I crush it with a marble rolling pin, basically, between linen, and I crush it and I break it up, and then I have a process for 50 days where I infuse that maceration in extra virgin organic olive oil, and if I can, I use Israeli oil. And let's also just bring to mind here that in ancient times, they did not have essential oils. Essential oils did not exist in ancient biblical Israel. What existed and what was their healing oils was the macerations or infusions. Okay, distillation in and of itself didn't exist, depending on what you read, anywhere from 250, around 850 to 1500 after the birth of Yeshua. And it was originally used for making alcohol. Okay, and now they may have used wool or linen and heat under some clay of sort, a clay pot, to maybe bring up moisture from a plant material and squeezed out the wool or the linen, probably mostly wool in that case because it would hold more than the linen, and use that and its properties, okay? So just to let you know, and I used to say the same thing. I was wrong. Shemen means oil. It's the pressed seed or the pressed life from the seed, okay, if we break down the ancient Hebrew word. But that means that an essential oil is an oil, and it also means that a cold pressed oil is an oil, okay? Like if I, just press olive oils, that's shemen, okay? So anyway, so back to this medical article, it talks about isolated compounds, okay? Just like we talked about frankincense and the boswellic acid. It's saying here that we can isolate some things from the dragon's blood, in this case, the Dracaena cinnabari, and they talk about its uses, but they're not telling you that they're using not the essential oil. Because once you make it into essential oil, you're only getting some of the chemical constituents, and you may be getting some chemical constituents that are not in the pressing. And it may or may not be safe depending on the condition of the extraction, if that makes sense, okay? So even when I read this, I know enough to say, oh, wow, well, what about an essential oil, okay? So I was going to read the properties, and I will try to share this because of all the papers I've seen, this one was the best and accurate, at least going into the differences between dragon, because a lot of articles were just one particular kind or another without the ifs, ands, or buts that you needed to know. So Croton Leglari is anti-inflammatory, it's wound healing, and it's cytotoxic. And then, of course, it's antibacterial and antidiarrheal, antiviral, etc. Okay, the Dracaena, the other one, but not necessarily. I mean, yes, I'm going to get those properties in the essential oil, but I'm going to be careful because if I'm going to use it in the essential oil form, I'm going to maybe burn the skin. I mean, and of course, this is one of the reasons why you almost always use a carrier oil with an essential oil. If I just got cut or I just got burned and I'm bleeding, or I've got a bad burn, I'm not going to worry about a carrier oil. In fact, I don't really want a carrier oil because I'm concerned that there might be some bacteria or something in that carrier oil, but I want to use, say, helichrysum or lavender or a combination thereof, like our Olive Care First Aid blend. I want that straight on there because I want to cut that bleeding. I want that wound cleaned, and I want it to start healing the blister from the burn right away. Okay. There are times when it is reasonable and preferred to have a essential oil neat, and neat means undiluted with the carrier oil. But predominantly, we always want to mix an essential oil, single or blend, with the carrier oil. Now, one of the things you have to be careful is a blend, right? A blend might mean it's a mix of single essential oils to create a blend, and it's neat, as in there's no carrier oil. Or a blend could mean I have a mixture of single essential oils plus a carrier, or it could mean I have something really expensive like sandalwood, and it really takes very little. 3% of sandalwood is amazing, but I have blended it with the carrier oil, okay? And so that means it's a blend. So you got to check, is your blend neat or is your blend with the carrier oil? And depending on which company or person you're dealing with, it makes a difference, okay? I hope some of this is making sense, and this is helpful, and just an example for you to consider when you're making your choices, and how withholding this information on purpose or by accident can cause misuse of a product, or purposely do in order to made better cells, I guess would be the word. Don't want to go in that too much, but it happens. So one of the things I found that the most I can find is that the Dracaena cinnabari. Now, understand they use this, like if you know that really red paint that's on, it's really like a blood, almost brown red, that's on like Chinese pictures and plates and all. They actually use this dragon's blood cinnabari to make paint. It's used for, quite a few other things. You'll find it very big in witchcraft because they will use it as a paint to make their little cards and their curses. And it's believed, the best I can see, is that the Dracaena cinnabari is the one that is more often or considered the ancient dragon's blood, most associated with witchcraft and the one most anciently known. But of course, and that would be, in the East and Middle East, whereas South America has a lot of this Croton legleri, which is where ours comes from in Brazil. It's usually Brazil, Peru, I think, or Ecuador. Whereas the other one, I can't remember off the top of my head, somewhere in the Middle East. I want to say it's Madagascar even, but so I just wanted you to understand that you can't, you really got to have more of a big picture and look around the if, ands, or buts and not just say, oh, even this medical report, oh, I can use that way. No, it doesn't say whether or not it's essential oil. And they don't realize that is the way people are maybe using it or interpreting this. They are actually using some dragon's blood to be an alternative or complementary medicine to treat diseases in clinical trials such as AIDS and AIDS-related diarrhea. And that is actually done with the Croton legleri, and they call it crofelemer. See, so they will maybe extract a certain component of that plant and then make it into a drug, basically. So I just wanted to point that out to you. I hope that was useful, and I don't know. Maybe you got some questions. I could say something, but I don't know that the questions and everything are coming through. And of course, when we go to post this, then maybe you can ask some questions, and I'll try to get to that. I've got to get an article done today on the safety oils to use or not to use for children. So I guess that's it. May your garments always be white, and let your head lack no shimmer. Shalom. Now I just have to figure out how to get out of here. If you're in this video now, you'll be able to choose if you want to save or delete it.